And welcome to episode 16. You may not agree with this,
But
I'm Maris Lowery.
and I'm Eric Thomas.
And as we welcome you to the podcast tonight, this podcast coming from the locker room, Eric. We're going to have a little talk in the locker room. We've got a lot of things on the table here for this podcast. The championship games in high school football in the state of West Virginia. We'll get into the college 12-team playoff. The teams have been put in. The seedings have been set. The games are set. We'll talk a little bit about that. Of course, we'll talk about the coaching situation at both Marshall and WVU. And last but certainly not least, our barking dog from the National Football League.
Yeah, and everything's really wrapping up in high school football around here. I guess we'll call it the Elite Eight. It used to be the Super Six right? Up in Wheeling, and now it's the Elite Eight down in Charleston, and all four classes look to be great battles.
And we'll dive into that in just a minute. I want to let you know that our podcast, like always, is brought to you in part by Modley's Plumbing and Heating. You never know when you need plumber or till you need heat fixed, till you need it done. You can call Modley's at 304-253-HELP. Also by Massey Power Sports. They have 0% financing on those side-by-sides, and they love the Carolina Panthers. Carolina was our barking dog. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the program. Carolina looked like they were going to pull off the big upset against Philadelphia, but they did cover. And also by Window World of Beckley. Well, Eric, like we talked about the high school football season, it's hard to believe that a week later, but I guess better late than never.
Correct.
And at one point, I wasn't sure we were going to have playoffs.
Yeah, I'm just glad they got them in, because we knew once they got rolling, it was going to be a lot of good games, and pretty much chalk in three of the four classes. I guess 1 and 2 in 4A. 1 and 2 versus
it's 1 and 2, 1 and 2, and 3 and 4 and 3 and 4.
Yes.
So it'll get started on Friday afternoon at Laley Field in Charleston. Friday the 13th at the noon kickoff will be the Class Single A game between Cameron and Wahama. The White Falcons won at Tucker County up in the snow, a battle in the snow.
Yeah, and we were thinking that the football field was going to be muddy, but it was the frozen tundra. And Cameron was able to come down and really shocked me. Of course, we both admitted we didn't know much about either team.
Right.
But I was just going to roll with the home team, and boy, did we get that one wrong. You as well. We thought Tug Valley would handle business. They got shut out on their home field.
Yeah, and you know what's surprising? When you look at the scores of the single A semifinals, Cameron beat Tug Valley, shutting them out, as you mentioned, 36-0, and Wahama beat Tucker County on the road 29-6.
And both home teams really just taking a beating on their home field.
So Cameron and Wahama, I really wouldn't know who to lean on that. I'm going to stick with Cameron because they went to Tug Valley and shut them out. I'm going to stick with Cameron.
Well, I will go with Wahama because, and we talked about this, their uniforms are real. I like the color scheme of their uniforms.
The White Falcons.
The White Falcons.
Of Wahama.
We'll see how that rolls out.
All right, then Friday night, the 13th, at 7 o'clock will be the AA championship. It'll be Frankfort against Rome. Now, an interesting piece about Rome, they won the 1991, actually it was Spencer High School.
Spencer High School.
They didn't become Rome until 93.
Yeah.
So Rome itself, the current school, has never won. In fact, this is the first time they've ever been in a championship game.
Yeah, I was going to say, you had a chance to read a few articles, and their coach said each victory is the biggest victory in school history. And they really got a big win over Independence, who had been a thorn in their playoff sides the last 2 out of 3 years.
Right.
So they were able to beat Independence handily, by the way, and finally had a chance to avenge a couple of losses to Independence, and they really won the game in the trenches. That you could tell that they were seasoned, and Independence's line was a little young, showed their youth, but that Independence Patriot team will be back to battle next year.
Well, that's the one thing, Independence, one of the 4 teams we cover in Raleigh County, and just a shout out to Independence and their staff. I know that they're disappointed they didn't win, but when you look at the last 4 years, the run they've made from runner-up to state champion to the last 2 years, making it to the semifinals, and I think there's a lot more coming.
Yeah, and the thing is, they ended up losing last year to Fairmont, who went on to win the state championship.
Right.
And I think Rome gets over the proverbial Independence hump, and I think they go on to win the state championship.
I'm going to agree with you on that. Of course, if you remember, Frankfort beat Independence last June in the baseball championship.
Yes, I do remember.
Yeah, you and I, we were there together. So
Frankfort
now, after winning in baseball, trying to come back the next year and trying to add another one by winning.
So
football.
I want to bring up something. Do you remember a conversation we
do.
had with a couple of Frankfort fans?
Yes.
We just need our listeners to know this. Maris and I, we were down first baseline, and Frankfurt's winning. And the whole time, there's a gentleman in front of us complaining about them being a double-A school. They'll never be able to compete. And here they are now.
They've won baseball.
Baseball,
They have a chance to win football.
football.
Yeah. So, but we both, you and I, in our gentleman way, tried to tell him we just don't agree with what you're saying.
We might not agree with him, but
yeah. All right, then we move to Saturday the 14th, and it'll be the Class AAA game at noon. I think these two on Saturday are going to be tremendous. All of them may be, but I'll tell you what, Hoover taking on Bridgeport, that ought to be some kind of game.
Well, some kind of game, but I think this Bridgeport team had a chance to watch that a little bit too. You and I,
right? When we were doing basketball, we had a football game.
I'm telling you, their offensive line,
they're on a mission.
They are on a mission, and I know Herbert Hoover. This will be their second state title game. What, in 4 years?
Yeah, and their quarterback is up for the Kennedy Award as the best player in the state of West Virginia, and he's thrown for over 6,000 yards in his career.
Well, he very athletic. We had a chance to cover him.
Hatfield's his name. Yeah,
Hatfield's his last name, but. For them to go on the road, and I know Princeton was down a legit all-state guy, but they handled Princeton.
Yes,
and that just shows you, it goes to show you can't compare scores or do this because Independence really struggled with Princeton. Herbert Hoover struggled with Independence, and then they go and throttle Princeton on their home field.
And that's the one thing, Eric, throughout the course of the playoffs, there were a lot of games score-wise that really weren't competitive. I was a little surprised at that. I thought some of these games might be a little more competitive than what they were.
I mean, that one really shocked me, and Princeton had to score late to make the score what it was. Right. I mean, they really got beat.
Yeah, 35-12 was that score. So now we get to, I guess they saved the best for last. It ought to be a great game, Martinsburg and Spring Mills. Spring Mills' only losses to Martinsburg, 17-12. Martinsburg was down in the fourth quarter to Huntington, 28-21.
7 minutes to go.
7 minutes to go, scored 2 touchdowns to go up. And then Huntington scored with 19 seconds, and the coach made a decision. He's going for the win. He went for 2, and Martinsburg held him.
I loved the attitude on the road, and hats off to Huntington, and they're well coached. Their coaches, one of the premier coaches in the state, and I think you do go for it. I just didn't like the play call particularly.
I didn't see the play.
I went home and watched it because I went home to my father-in-law, and he's like, "Man, did you see the end of the game?" And I said, "Yeah, Huntington did the right thing." He said, "They did the right thing, just ran the wrong play."
Well, I didn't even
so
see
I had to go find the play.
Yeah.
And it was similar to Georgia Tech. I don't know if you saw the end of the Georgia Tech overtime game. They ran the exact same play at the teeth of Martinsburg's defense. I know it's only 2 yards, but with your speed, I would have had the quarterback on the edge, run pass option, something. But I've never lost a game because I'm sitting in this chair.
Here's the thing, and it's funny you say that because I told when you and I did basketball scrimmages on video production, I told referees and coaches, I said, coaching is hard, refereeing is hard. That's why I don't do either one.
And you know what was good about those scrimmages? We'll touch on them a little bit, but you were real talk. We were right there by the coaches. Yes. So whoever was coaching the home side of it, we really had good conversations with them. Right. They interacted with us because they were checking our book like we were official scorers.
We are, aren't we? But anyway, I'll tell you what, Martinsburg and Spring Mills, and I'll tell you what, Eric, it's hard. I think Spring Mills, I wouldn't be shocked if they won, but I just can't go against Martinsburg. Yeah. They've been a predominant team. Dave Walker going for his 9th championship. I have to go with Martinsburg.
You may not agree with this, but I think that they're the Chiefs. The Martinsburg Bulldogs are the Chiefs, Kansas City Chiefs of high school football. Until somebody beats them, they're the champs, and it's going to be tough to take that title from them, especially when they got Dave Walker back. He came back. Now, he left the program in good hands, but once he came back, it's right back to rolling like he had it.
Well, like I said, the only loss Spring Mills had in the regular season, 17-12. So no question that Spring Mills has the players to play at Martinsburg.
Yes, they do. And it came down to like 1 or 2 plays late in the game that secured the victory for Martinsburg.
All right, with this podcast, you want to do what, Eric?
You want to like, share, and subscribe at Warden Broadcast Network on YouTube.
And, of course, this podcast, like all of our podcasts, is brought to you by Modley's Plumbing and Heating, 304-253-HELP. Also by Massey Power Sports. Got to show love to the Carolina Panthers. Matt and Paul Massey are big Carolina fans, and I was able to see them this week. They were a little disappointed with the loss to Tampa last week and to Philadelphia this week, but they think that they're heading in the right direction with their young quarterback, Bryce Young.
They are, and if you saw the last play, we'll talk about it at the end of the game.
They
very well should have won the game.
Yes. Also brought to you by Window World. When you're thinking about this spring and summer of getting your house fixed up, now's the time to reach out to Leanna Burdett and her staff at Window World so they can get you on their schedule and take care of you. All right, now, Eric, it's time to switch things to the college football playoff. And, you know, there's a lot of grumbling by a lot of national pundits about, you know, Alabama should be in, shouldn't be in. Everybody's got their own take on that. People think that maybe Boise State shouldn't have got a bye. I'll start to say, in my opinion, Alabama had 3 losses. There's only one team in the playoffs with 3 losses, and that's Clemson. They played their way in, but I thought Alabama getting crushed to Oklahoma, for me, that did it for me as far as Alabama.
To me as well, and the game wasn't even close. They didn't even look like a playoff team that game. Went to 24-6.
24-3.
24-3. See, I even added 3 points to them. And you know, I am a Miami fan. I like Alabama.
I'm not a hater, but I just don't think they deserve to be in.
Miami had a chance. Take care of business. Win on the road at Syracuse. You're in the championship. Then if you lose that to SMU, you still have a beef. Like
they probably get in.
Probably still get in.
Yes.
In Alabama, you just didn't do enough, and the Clemson win knocked them out.
Right.
They were doing everything they could to get Alabama in. I'm sorry.
Right.
They were making sure that they were going to get in because they thought Clemson may lose to SMU.
Well, Alabama was in prior to that
Exactly.
game, and you're right. Had SMU would have won that game, Clemson would have been out. Alabama would have been in,
and they would have been at 11, I think, or no, probably 12.
11 or 12.
11 or 12.
But either way, they would have gotten in.
They wanted
and now
in.
Alabama's whining they need to change their schedule. Blah blah blah. Look, they lost to Vanderbilt, and I get Vanderbilt was better, but Texas went down there and beat Vanderbilt.
Yep.
Vanderbilt lost other games. They lost that. Alabama did have a good win against Georgia, but they lost 3 games.
Yeah, but they had a chances to win
Right.
the 3 games. Well, other than Oklahoma, they got destroyed, but the other games they had a chance to handle it. And
The
they just
Oklahoma game
didn't.
that's what done them in.
Yeah, that really in late too.
Yeah.
I mean, when you had it right there out in front of you.
So we'll take a look at the official college football playoff seeding. And number 12, Clemson comes in at number 12. They played Texas, and I kind of understand that. Texas lost the Southeastern Conference Championship game in overtime, their second loss to Georgia. So it'll be Clemson going to Austin to take on the Longhorns.
Yeah, and there'll be a lot of orange in that. You know, burnt orange against orange in that one. But I do like Texas at home to maybe get the victory in that one.
Then we look at the number 11 seed, and that's SMU. They'll be on the road at Happy Valley to take on Penn State.
Yeah, and that's a tough trip for SMU, the Pony Express, to go on the road. I think Penn State might have found something even in the loss against Oregon because they've never beaten a top 5 team in the last probably 8 to 10 years, but they actually went toe-to-toe with Oregon, and I think that'll get them rolling into this first round.
Yeah, if you look at that Big Ten title game, Penn State really moved the ball. They had a terrible turnover that led to an Oregon touchdown, an interception deep in their own territory. But outside of that, they kind of really played with them toe-to-toe.
It was good football on Saturday.
The 10-7 matchup is Indiana against Notre Dame. It's an in-state battle, and here's a little nugget on that game. The last time that Notre Dame and Indiana played was the very first game of the NBC contract for Notre Dame, September 7th, 1991, and Indiana was the first team to play Notre Dame in that NBC contract.
What was the score of that game?
It was 48-27 Notre Dame won.
Run it back. It's going to be Notre Dame big in this game.
So Notre Dame and Indiana, and then closing out the first round, perhaps the best first round game, the 9-8 matchup. And you would think because 9-8 would be the best matchup, Tennessee at the Ohio State.
And those Ohio State fans are restless, and I'm telling you, Day needs to win this game. Ryan Day has to win. It's going to be a night game.
Night game.
You know why? They've been lobbying all, my son goes to Ohio State. And he said the funniest thing, he said they paid all this money for these new lights, and every game that they had was major game was a noon game.
Noon kickoff.
Big noon kickoff.
Yeah.
So finally, if they can light that scoreboard up a little bit against Tennessee and maybe get the home crowd going and get the light show going.
So let me ask you this. Should Tennessee beat Ohio State as Ryan Day, Ohio State's coach next year?
Yeah.
I think so too.
I think so too.
I know the fans are ready to ship him out now.
You know how it is, man. Be careful what you wish for. And all these fans, it's short for fanatics.
Right.
I mean,
well, also I can remind you something that you're well aware of. You had a coach, Jim Donnan, who coached you, that also coached Georgia.
Yes.
And he had a phenomenal record, but he never beat Georgia Tech, he never beat Florida, and he had a great record, and then they got rid of him.
Yeah, but that was 8 years running. And then the 1 year that they got rid of him, he won the bowl game, but he lost to Florida as a favorite. And they just got rid of him right after the bowl game and sent him packing.
And granted, it was 8 years running, but now for Ryan Day, that's 4 years running.
Right.
So Ohio State might double it and say it's like eight years running.
Well, this will be the first class, his first recruiting class they went 4 years and never beat
Michigan.
Michigan. So
Yeah. And Michigan, out of those 4 years, this was their least talented team.
Yeah.
They were way down, and Ohio State was a 3-touchdown favorite and still didn't beat them.
Yeah, it was reminiscent of WVU's worst loss of the last 30-some years when they against Pitt. So we'll talk about that.
So now we look at the 4 byes. Oregon, number 1. I think nobody would disagree with that.
Nope.
They're the only undefeated team left. So Georgia went in the Southeastern Conference, number 2. I don't think any questions there. They put Boise State at 3. I don't have a problem with Boise State getting a bye. In my opinion, I think the Big 12 champion Arizona State should have been the 3, Boise State the 4. But I can live with it either way.
Yeah, but here in the reason they're bashing the Big 12 just a tad. Arizona State was picked to finish last.
Right.
End up winning. So I guess their body of work. You can say what you want, but everybody's talking about the Big 12. But 1 through like 7, 8. It were good teams.
Right.
I mean, Colorado could beat, on any given Saturday, could beat some teams. Arizona State. I mean, the only bad teams were at the bottom. I mean, Arizona was
bad. And here's another thing. Oklahoma State was picked to be one of the top teams.
That's
they
right.
They didn't win a conference game. They were probably the worst team in the whole conference.
Hey, they were so bad this year. They called Gundy up and said, hey, man, you
You
need to give some of that
back.
money. You need to give us some cash
Yeah,
back.
you need to give some of it back. Yes. Yes. All right. So we're going to, here in just a second, we're going to dive into it, maybe give a little predictions. But in the meantime, we need to do what?
Like, share, and subscribe at Warden Broadcast Network on YouTube.
And this podcast, like all of our podcasts, is brought to you in part by Modley's Plumbing and Heating. You can dial them up at 304-253-HELP. Also by Massey Power Sports. Got to show a little love to the Carolina Panthers because they're big fans there of the Carolina Panthers at Massey's. They also have 0% financing on the side-by-sides and by Window World of Beckley. So, Eric, when you look at the 12-team bracket right off the bat in the first round, is there any upsets or anything that jumps out at you?
Yeah, there's not too much that jumps out at me, but I think that Arizona State team is a little more dangerous than people think in that next round. Whoever gets to Arizona State, they might be on a mission. It might be a tough out.
I know Ohio State is at least a touchdown favorite over Tennessee.
Yes.
But an 8-9 matchup, it would be an upset. But it wouldn't like I would be surprised if Tennessee won the game. I don't think they will. I think Ohio State will win the game.
Yeah, Tennessee, like we had a chance to see. I watched them play Alabama, and they end up winning that game. But I think Ohio State matches up with this Tennessee. I think it's a good draw for Ohio State.
Yeah, I do too. I watched Tennessee play Georgia as you did, and that Georgia beat them by 2 touchdowns. I saw Arkansas beat Tennessee. I really wasn't impressed with Tennessee. Actually, I think all the higher seeds win. I think Penn State wins, Notre Dame wins, Texas wins. Ohio State wins. I do think Oregon's going to beat Ohio State in the
next
quarterfinals.
round.
I think your semifinals, your Final Four, this is my take. I think it'll be Oregon against Texas, and it'll be Notre Dame, Penn State. That's my Final Four.
Notre Dame, Penn State. I wouldn't disagree with that.
And one of the reasons I say that about, and that's not me being a homer at Notre Dame, Georgia's got their starting quarterback back. Doesn't look like he's going to play.
Their starting quarterback got banged up, and the backup got banged up.
Right.
He was a little foggy after that hit he took. So who knows if he even gets out of the concussion protocol for in 2 weeks. So
And the one thing, this Georgia team isn't the team that won 2 national championships. And for Notre Dame, this is not the 2018 team or the 2020 team. I think this team's a little better, but you still got to go out and you got to do it on the field.
But that's why I like this 12-team playoff. It's going to be interesting matchups that you wouldn't see. Who wouldn't want to see a Penn State, Notre Dame? Those two teams,
classic matchup.
And both of those programs need to go a little further.
Right.
Penn State, they're on Franklin. The guy finishes in the top 8 to 10, top 8 in the last 5 or 6 years, but he doesn't have that signature top 5 win. And if he can get into the finals, that would be a feather in his cap.
And on paper, Eric, I think you would agree. We talked about it before we started recording that Penn State may have the best draw, finishing at 6 because they get SMU at home, and if they win, they get Boise State. And on paper, you would think that would be the clearest path to the semifinals.
And I think that, of course, I think they'd be favored on the road at Boise.
Right, and that would be at a neutral site. That would be a bowl game.
Yes. That's right. That's a bowl game. I forgot it's going to be Rose, Peach.
It's the Rose Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Notre Dame and Georgia, if it works out that way, would be the Sugar Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl.
Fiesta Bowl, yeah.
And of course, the national championship game will be in Atlanta on January 20th.
Wow. So, just a lot of, I'm very excited good matchups, and we'll see how it unfolds.
All right, we have to do what now?
Like, share, and subscribe at Warden Broadcast Network on YouTube.
And this podcast, like all of our podcasts, is brought to you by Massey Power Sports. Massey, big fans of the Carolina Panthers. Where's that growl at? Let me hear a growl.
Oh, man,
that Panther.
that cat's cold right now.
I thought it was crawling around in the locker room back
he's
there.
whimpering a little bit and losing to the Eagles. I think the Eagles pounced him a little bit, but
and that's 0% financing on the side-by-sides. Modley's Plumbing and Heating, 304-253-HELP, and by Window World of Beckley. Well, now, Eric, we'll talk a little bit of coaches speak. And first of all, what the heck's going on at Marshall University?
Man.
Coach Huff, he gets on the plane, takes the team down there, and they thrashed. I mean, they crushed Louisiana, win the Sun Belt Championship, and before the plane lands in Huntington, Marshall's got a new coach, Coach Gibson, and Coach Huff is now going to be coaching Southern Miss in the same conference. I know in this day and time anything could happen, but the way that transpired was kind of weird.
Yeah, it's been a weird situation, and you know as well as I do. We won't say the names. We know some Marshall fans. One's a Big Green member. A
lot of people did not want Huff for whatever reason. I don't know why.
And the thing is, I don't understand it. But that being said, he didn't get an extension. Then they wanted to give him an extension, and he was like, "Nah, man, I bet you're gonna have to up the money, I guess."
Right. He wanted it, and then they wouldn't give it to him. And I had a chance to meet him his first year. In fact, actually, was in his second year. I did an interview with him, and and I know when they beat Notre Dame 2 years ago, that's maybe forgotten by a lot of people, but that still, I think, is the biggest win in their school history.
Well, think about this, and if you think about what he's done over the last 2 years. My wife and I, we had a chance to go. They beat Virginia Tech. They beat two Power Four. I mean, they beat Notre Dame and Virginia Tech back to in
the same year.
Yeah, and went to 4 straight bowl games. I mean, what more could he do? I just don't get it. And the grass is not always greener. But that being said, Tony Gibson is a good hire.
And I'm not saying he won't be. We just have to wait and see.
But we'll see. So. But now it's going to take him. He's going to have to build, because you can guarantee
players are going to leave.
Those players, and they'll probably go follow Huff to Southern Miss.
Some of them will.
Some of them will.
Yeah, I agree. So just don't really know. That whole situation kind of seems just kind of different to me. I don't know. Don't have my hand on the pulse. I'm not involved with Marshall like that. So I wouldn't know.
I talk to a lot of guys.
I talk to a lot of people
that don't, and none of them like Huff.
Nobody like Huff. I don't understand, but he's got I think he's like 13 games over 500.
13 over 500, and played, and like you said, signature win of the program, beating Notre Dame at Notre Dame.
That'll be the biggest win probably they'll ever have.
Yeah. I mean,
until the next big win like that, till they beat another. But it'd be hard unless they are going to beat Ohio State, or really, or going to beat an Alabama, or it'd have to be a real blue blood if it's going to be better than that.
Yeah, they'll never top that.
I don't think so. All right, now we got to switch gears to what's going to happen with the news of WVU. There was talk that they thought that Barry Odom from UNLV was going to be the coach, but he decided to go to Purdue. That's not going to happen. They talked about maybe the Tulane coach. He re-upped. He's staying where he's at. So you got any insight?
The Army coach
possible?
Yeah, possible. But here's a new name that was released by ESPN today. Anthony Beck.
Yeah, and actually, I heard something about Anthony Beck on the way over here before we recorded. I think they're kind of a little lukewarm on him now. A little hot on him earlier, but a little lukewarm on him now.
But here's the thing: throw him in, because he's been on NFL coaching staffs. He in an XFL he runs the St. Louis Battlehawks, and the reason I know that because my father-in-law and I watched that during the spring, and we were like, we're gonna follow this team because it has a West Virginia guy coaching it. So I heard his name, but I'm telling you, we might eat some words that we had on our previous podcast, because the more late it gets in the coaching search, Rich Rod seems like he keeps rising up. Rich Rodriguez.
And I said on our last podcast he had a 0 chance to be the coach. I could be totally wrong. Now I said Jimbo Fisher, a 0 chance. Looks like I'm going to be right on that.
On that one, yeah.
But I will say this. Here's one thing I do know, is that I don't think nobody really knows.
Nobody really knows. Yeah. But here's what's funny about the landscape in college football today. Did you see who got hired at UCF?
Yeah, Scott Frost. They brought him back.
They brought a guy back that they paid to get. No, he left. Where'd he go?
I think they fired him. He went to Nebraska. And that didn't work. And he
didn't work. So they were still paying him, though, after they fired him. Brought him out. Now he's back.
I guess what that says is, who says you can't divorce your wife and then remarry her, right? I don't know. I mean, what do I know about that?
I don't want to get in that business.
Yeah, what do I know about that? Nothing. So, or at least nothing that I'm telling anyway. But anyway, we'll just have to wait and see. But I think anybody that watches this, and Eric, you would agree, that West Virginia's got to do this sooner than later.
Yeah, they do.
I mean,
I think by Thursday. I think by Thursday they'll have a hire.
I think so too by the end of the week, because their bowl game comes up on December 17th, and the staff that's preparing that team for the bowl game and going to play in that, they may have a few or none of them may even be on the next staff.
Yeah, and they have to move on and find themselves, some work.
And they got to find out what players staying and what is not.
Yeah, that's true. The portal, there's one name that I know for sure that's already in the portal. Trotter.
Yeah, their top defensive player is already gone.
To me, and you've heard me say it all year. I said that guy's the best player on the team.
All right, now we got to wrap it up with our barking dog from the National Football League. And Eric, you and I both had the same barking dog last week, and it was the Carolina Panthers. Show a little love for the Carolina Panthers. And you're right, Eric, they should have perhaps won the game, and Philadelphia had a stance coming down the stretch.
Yeah, but a pass had to get overturned. That was a touchdown.
Yeah.
If you saw the seam route, the guy
he should have caught it.
He should have caught it. Leggett, I think, is his name.
Yeah,
he catches it. And he makes it harder than what it should have been. Just catch
it should
the
have
ball.
been a touchdown for
he
the
rolls
win.
right in the end zone for the win.
So with the barking dogs being correct, Eric, through 14 weeks, you are 7-7, and we are 8-6. And so for this week, my barking dog, and I had a hard time looking at a couple of different things, and I got this pin right here. You can see this light blue pin. That's the color of the Miami Dolphins. So that's why I'm going with the Dolphins. They're +3 on the road against Houston. Houston's coming off a bye. Miami got a big overtime win yesterday, and you picked the Jets as your backup, as your backup dog, and they would have covered. But I'm taking Miami as my barking dog this week.
Yeah, and so hold that up. Not the pin there. Right here.
Hold the Panthers up.
The Panthers. My barking dog, the Dallas Cowboys, getting 1.5 at Carolina Panthers, go on the road and get a win.
And by the way, the Dallas Cowboys, as we're recording this, are getting ready to play the Cincinnati Bengals, and that was my second barking dog. I think Dallas might win the game straight up, but we'll see. But also, we'll touch before we say our goodbyes, Eric. We had a great time in doing basketball for video productions over the weekend, scrimmages. And now we're ready to dive into the start of the 2024-2025 girls and boys high school basketball season. That's kind of hard to believe, isn't it?
It's really hard to believe. But time flies when you're having fun. And I know you don't look at a lot of the preseason polls, but I got a chance to see the preseason coaches poll today. And you did South Charleston in 4A. Yes, they're ranked in the top. Right. They're ranked in the top 5. I think they had them 4th or 5th. Beckley at 8, and in AAA, Fairmont was 1, Shady 2, Nitro 3.
Right, and who was 1 in 4A? Was it Morgantown?
No, it was
Spring Mills.
Spring Mills 1, Morgantown 2, 3. I couldn't remember who 3 was.
And of course, Spring Mills and Morgantown was the championship game
from a year ago. And Charleston Catholic was in the AA in Wyoming East.
Right.
So. What I'm saying is that is a great kickoff to the season. We got a chance to see
about all
of course, Shady's going to be well coached and great.
Yeah.
Beckley is going to be scrappy. I think they'll be a little better than where they're ranked right now.
I think so too.
And I think so too. Develop some bench, but I'm telling you, the team that really impressed me that people need to look out for, that Nitro team, and they have height, they have guards, they're well coached. That's going to be a team that will be a state tournament team.
Also, I think in AA, Wyoming East could be very, very good as well.
Very good. Very good. Had some young nucleus, and they have 2 9th graders that really can get after it.
Well, this podcast, like all of our podcasts, is brought to you by Modley's Plumbing and Heating, 304-253-HELP, by Massey Power Sports. They're big fans of the Carolina Panthers. They have 0% financing on their side-by-sides, and by Window World. And we have to do what?
Like, share, and subscribe at Warden Broadcast Network on YouTube.
And I'm Maris Lowery.
And I'm Eric Thomas.
And we'll see you next week.